This is Mr. MegaManFan, and I'm testing some games that I picked up for a song from Pop Culture Exchange. Starting with this copy of Lilo and Stitch. I'm using a Nintendo GameCube first generation with the Eon HD adapter attached to the back. I apologize for the moire that you saw there on the screen, but we're going to have to put up with a little of that since I don't have any other way to direct capture it. But I do know that watching this stretch to full screen is like, oh my god, the pixelation, the screen tearing. I realized the animation was kind of limited back in the Game Boy Advance days, but that's too much even for me, so I'm going to shrink this screen down from full size to normal because I don't think we can play it in the wide aspect. That's just not going to work. Probably should decrease this even further, but I think we're just going to have to live with it at this aspect for now and find out what kind of game Lilo and Stitch is for just $1.99. I'm not expecting full motion video, not expecting a sprawling adventure worthy of a modern platforming game such as Shantae and the Pirate's Curse or Guacamelee, but this seems like it's a pretty competent pickup for $1.99. Stitch can duck, Stitch can shoot, Stitch can jump, and Stitch can die. It is a typical Disney platforming game for the era. So let's pop this one out and move on to the next episode. Hey, 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 hey. This is a warning from COPPA that you should be 18 and up to watch videos on this channel because they don't want any minors. So even though I'm playing games that are targeted somewhat to a younger audience, this video is not for you if you are under the age of 13. Sorry, kiddos. Gonna have to watch a different channel or watch YouTube Kids because I do be talking some shit about some cheap GBA games, but hopefully I won't be about this one. Mucha Lucha, Mascaritas of the Lost Code. And I know that Ryan Taylor told me in my pickups video that he thought Mucha Lucha was a highly underrated cartoon. And as a pro wrestling fan, I should probably know more about it than I do, but I don't think I ever watched Mucha Lucha when it was on TV. I've got a PlayStation 2 game that I think I just tested and left it at that. And now I've got a Game Boy Advance game that I'm also going to test. But I'll do a little more than just test it here. I'll actually play it for a little bit and see what kind of game we got. So far, all of these games are working just fine. I haven't had to do any cleaning on any of these yet, even though I did get out the Q-tips and the rubbing alcohol just in case, because you never know when you're getting used games. You might have to clean them, especially cartridges. And you know what? Game Boy Advance games, even though they're tiny, they are definitely cartridges. You might think of cartridges as being something the size of Atari 2600 or 8-bit Nintendo or Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64, but this is a cart-based system, which is actually somewhat the premise of the GBA consolizer, if you've seen videos about that. It's essentially treating your Game Boy Advance like it's a console, and the cartridges like you're plugging them into a cartridge-based console instead of just plugging them into a handheld system. Would I like a GBA consolizer? Probably. Would I rather spend the money on an analog pocket? Probably, because that'll support more than just Game Boy Advance games, although I think the consolizer can also play Game Boy and Game Boy Color, but the Pocket can do even more than that. So the Pocket will do all kinds of things if they support all the different cores that it could possibly run. Anyway, these kids are out to get back some item that the principal with his big old brain lost, but what we have here is a very weird style Kunio-kun game, or perhaps you would call it a River City Ransom style game. Side-scrolling beat 'em up with enemies that are very hard to hit for some reason. And then, even though you can move up and down in the playfield, I can't seem to pick up any of the items that are in the playfield, which is just irritating me to no end. So I'm actually going to classify this one as being some straight up shovelware shit. I don't think I want to play any more of Mucha Lucha than that. Not saying it wasn't a good cartoon, just saying I'm not going to spend that much time on this particular Game Boy Advance game for this particular video. We're going to move on to something else. And that something else would be Chicken Little, which was only $1.99. Now, what do you want to bet this is going to be a side-scrolling platforming game? Why do all of these GBA shovelware games seem to be a side-scrolling platforming pick up items, collect items type game? It seems like that was the only thing developers knew how to do if you had a licensed property. Oh, just make a platforming game out of it. And since this one is a Disney title, I don't have high hopes because this is not like in the 90s when Aladdin revolutionized platforming games and was a hit for a Disney title on Sega Genesis, the third best selling of all time, I might add, right behind Sonic and Sonic 2. That was truly a revolution of platforming. I wouldn't say any of the ones I played so far today are, but I do like the parallax scrolling, the fact that there's stuff going on in the background here. That's pretty cool. Looks like he's inside a house that's inside a chicken coop. And he's got some sort of ghost image of him following him as well. Actually, technically impressive for some Game Boy Advance shovelware based on a movie that I've honestly never seen. Maybe I should go watch that on Disney Plus now that I have that. So we are 3 for 3 in working games. Still haven't had to get out the old Q-tips and clean the fucking shit out of any of these games yet, but you never know. Tetris Attack might be the one. This is the oldest one I've tested so far. This one's probably, 30 years old? 27 to 30? We'll see when the copyright date pops up, but it's not a spring chicken, no pun intended. This game is definitely going to be on the elder side. It's not a Game Boy Advance game. It's not even a Game Boy Color game. Oh, 1996. So that makes it a 23-year-old game. Not quite as old as I thought, but definitely not a new game by any stretch of the imagination, because at least Game Boy Advance games were early to mid-2000s, so this is still much older than that. Nice use of color here by the rendering of the Game Boy Color emulation in the Game Boy player, or you could call it the Super Game Boy player type effect, where it picks a color palette, and it actually looks really nice here. So I'm guessing they pre-programmed in some presets for people using it on Game Boy Player, and it's just defaulting to those, but it's actually visually very nice. Even though this was a gray Game Boy cartridge, it does look like it's been at least considered how it would look on a Game Boy Player or a Game Boy Color, or I should say on a Super Game Boy. Gotta appreciate that level of detail. And Tetris Attack, or Panel de Pon as some know it, or Pokemon Puzzle League as others know it, is a simple game where you line up rows of shapes. When you get 3 or more in a row, they disappear. There's also a DS game called Henry Hatsworth that uses the same formula in a different way. It combines side-scrolling platforming with match 3 at the same time. You have to literally do both. It's really challenging. But that's a decent version of Tetris Attack. Now let's see how Caesar's Palace is. For only $1.99, I'm not expecting a whole lot, but to have a Game Boy game that I didn't previously have, I feel like that's worth it for that low of an amount. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. At least it's working right out of the bag. I gotta give Pop Culture credit. I don't usually have to clean their stuff. So either they test it and they know it's clean, or they clean it before they bag it. One or the other. Can't say the same for some of the stuff I bought at other stores where I definitely had to give it the old rub down with the Q-tips and the rubbing alcohol to get it working. Now this one definitely doesn't appear to have any kind of color palette, Although it's interesting that they kind of give you a mouse. I don't know how well the mouse would have controlled with the Game Boy D-pad, but using the Game Boy player on the cube and using a Wavebird, it actually feels kind of like moving a mouse around the screen. Not that I'm saying that's any great shakes, because the color palette here is absolutely bland, and the selection of things you can do in this virtual casino, not exactly wowing me here. Like, ooh, I can pull the handle on a slot machine, or ooh, I can put some chips on the roulette table and spin the wheel and make the deal. But that's unfortunately kind of the way it is with casino games. They're just not the super most exciting things in the world to play. Unless your name is Aaron Hansen and you're part of the Game Grumps, and then you can bet all your winnings on one number and multiply them 30-fold, and then bet it on that same number again and multiply that 30-fold. And then you can buy gifts for all your girlfriends in Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball or whatever fucking game he was playing that day. That would be the only way you get any kind of excitement out of it. So let's move on to something else. We want something else. We want something else. Well, there's only one other thing that I've got to test, so this one's going to be kind of strange because honestly, it's not going to do anything. It actually has a little bit of code in there that recognizes you put it into a Game Boy player, and it won't play it because it says you can only do that on your Game Boy Advance. So we're just going to see a splash screen here that says, sorry, this isn't compatible. But that proves it works. So this is Mr. MegaManFan saying, thanks for watching. See you next time.